You're probably looking for a UPS that actually lets you keep working when the lights flicker, not just a piece of metal with a long list of specs you'll never use. Maybe you've already seen a few models that promise 6 kV protection and wondered whether you'll end up paying for power that you'll never need. I get that hesitation. You've got servers, a home office, maybe a few network switches, and you don't want to waste money on something that sounds great on paper but turns out to be a hassle in real life. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started digging into the CyberPower OL6KRT, the first thing I looked at was how it fits into a typical small to medium business or a power-hungry home lab. This isn't a tiny desktop UPS, it's a 6000 VA/5400W unit that sits in a 6U rack or can stand on the floor as a tower. That size immediately tells you it's meant for equipment that draws a fair amount of juice. Think a couple of servers, a network rack, maybe a NAS and a UPS-backed monitor. If you only need to protect a single desktop PC, you're probably overpaying. On the flip side, if you've been running a mini data center on a budget, this is the kind of capacity that lets you avoid buying two separate units. One of the first practical questions I asked, how easy is it to actually set up and monitor? CyberPower bundled the unit with a pre-installed ROM card 205 communication card, which talks to their smart app. The app shows you load percentage, battery runtime, and even lets you schedule automatic shutdowns. In my testing, connecting the card was literally plug and play. Snap the card into the back, run the cable, fire up the app, and you're looking at a clear LCD readout on the front panel that mirrors the phone screen. That visual feedback is useful when you're juggling several pieces of gear. You can glance at the LCD and instantly know you're still on battery or that the load is approaching the 80% threshold where you might want to trim something. What about the real-world reliability? The UPS uses what CyberPower calls battery equalization technology. In plain English, it means the internal charger periodically balances each cell so the pack stays healthy longer. I'm not a battery chemist, but I've seen cheaper units where a single weak cell drags the whole pack down, cutting runtime in half after a year. Here, the runtime charts in the app show a fairly consistent 12-minute buffer when the load sits at around 60%, enough time to either ride out a short outage or let a server shut down cleanly. You won't get an hour plus of backup at full load, but you also won't be left guessing whether the battery will fail when you need it most. Now let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. First, the unit is heavy, roughly 180 pounds, and the 6U form factor means you need a rack or a sturdy floor space. That's fine if you already have a rack, but if you're a home user with a desk, you'll need to carve out a spot and possibly buy a rack shelf. Second, the 4 outlets on the front are all IECC13, which are great for server power cords but not ideal if you wanted to plug in a regular desktop or a monitor without adapters. You can still use a small power strip behind the UPS, but you lose the ability to monitor those devices individually. Finally, while the 3-year warranty covers the batteries, the warranty is limited to $300,000 of connected equipment, a generous figure for most setups, but you should still inventory the value of what you're protecting and make sure it sits under that ceiling. Who should buy this thing? If you run a small office with a couple of rack-mount servers, a network switch, a UPS-backed storage array, and you need a single point of protection that can also give you remote monitoring, the OL6KRT checks those boxes. It's also a solid choice for a home lab enthusiast who has already built a rack and wants a unit that can handle a mixed load without constantly juggling spare batteries. The Smart app adds a layer of confidence. You can set alerts, see the exact runtime left, and even run diagnostics from your phone. Who should skip it? If you're just protecting a single desktop, a laptop, or a TV, you'll be paying for capacity you'll never use, and a smaller 1500 VA model will be more than enough. Also, if you don't have a rack or a dedicated floor space, the size and weight could become a pain. And if you rely heavily on USB-C or other non-IEC power sources, you'll need extra adapters, which defeats the clean setup that the unit promises. Let's walk through a day in the life of someone who actually uses this UPS. I set up a pair of Dell PowerEdge servers, each pulling about 350W, a Cisco switch at 100W, and a Synology NAS at 150W. Total load sits around 900W, roughly 20% of the UPS's.